everybody knew what a downwinder was. We were the anti-nuclear capital of the world. I was an autistic kid. My father was a drafted United States Marine, an incredible man. I come from an incredible family. My uncle stood on Omaha Beach on D-Day. I grew up on a huge ranch out by the lake. He was a beautiful, incredible person. He was at Pendleton, combat ready, and they were human guinea pig. They were marched into the trenches in Nevada. They're called atomic veterans. He nearly died at the blast. Between 1951 and 1968, we had 300 open-air tests. Well, as different scientists started to write about this, Wallace Stegner was at the University of Utah at the time. I got to know him. Edward Abbey was hanging around there. I got to know him. I got to know all these environmentalists, and I was an environmentalist, and it was a passionate, intense subject matter there.
All nuclear fighters, all hands on deck, all hands on deck, all hands on deck. All nuclear fighters, all hands on deck, all hands on deck, all hands on deck. They'll be calling you a radical. Bloomgate, 311, whatever you want to call it. I call it Pacific genocide, whatever. It's fucking giant conspiratorial across all demographics. All nuclear fighters, all hands on deck, all hands on deck, all hands on deck. They'll be calling you a radical. All nuclear fighters, all hands on deck, all hands on deck, all hands on deck. Bloomgate, 311, whatever you want to call it. I call it Pacific genocide, whatever. It's fucking giant conspiratorial across all demographics. They'll be calling you a radical. May God have mercy on all of your souls.
Nuclear power was evolving. We were promised, oh, this can't happen. It will never.
Good morning. Time to come out of your dogma snuggies for at least, an hour. A couple hours of freaking week. I know it's hard. You're branded. They've got you. It's a difficult gig, I understand. When you're trying to work 65, 70 hours a week, try to make ends meet. Pay these ridiculous bills that have been sucked up and classified into your soul, into your branding. A lot of things about on the nuclear front, American culture, gone. But first off, I want to talk about the outrage, absolute outrage, that the abuse of politicians and lobbyists into the tax code. I mean, this country, I can't believe this country. The NFL has nonprofit status. You do know the NFL has nonprofit status. How is that even possible? You're talking a bunch of elitists, multi-billionaires plaything. And by the way, I want people to very much understand this. The average NFL player lives to be 51 years old. It's a brutal, brutal freaking sport. Now, I'm a fan of the NFL. My uncle played in the NFL. I played a lot of football when I was young. In fact, Jim McMahon, who I know very personally, he and I played together against each other a lot here when I was young. I remember on a scrimmage, I had 2 interceptions off him in one game. And look, he had a crust career, but he was so steroided up. He's a mess, by the way, right now. You want to talk a mess? He doesn't even know who you are, where you are, his own family. He's gone. Blows to the head, absolute. Steroid juiced up. They're all on steroids. Every one of them. If you're not on them, if you're not on human growth hormone, the NFL try to claim it. The NFL encourages it. Now think about them having non-profit. Why was nonprofits originally set up? For charitable organizations. To be do-gooders. Do-gooders? Goodell made $44 million. Nonprofit. They hold the cities hostage for their stadiums. Paul Allen, Seattle, the thief of, you're talking Microsoft, the greatest thieves in human history. I'm not kidding. Paul Allen, these guys stole everything they have. Everything they have, they stole. From here. Word perfect. The case, pulled it off. So the thief is still thieving. Holds the Seattle freaking taxpayers hostage, build my stadiums, do everything. Why? The guys that are. It's unbelievable, and the American populace just loves it because they've turned into this. I cannot believe what the American populace has turned into. Any issue that really matters, forget about it. Everybody says it's always been. No, it's not always been this way. Not even close to be this way. Have no accountability on the taxpayers dying. I remember when I was a kid, people wanted to know where their taxes went. Oh boy. And if these guys were misusing it, they descended in droves. The public was the watchdog. Not anymore. They could care less. I mean, extortion, freaking exploitation, freaking corruption. America's the most corrupt freaking country in the history of humanity, bar none, bar none. It's proven over and over and over. Politicians, the tax. I'll agree with Chafee finally here, you know. By the way, I mean, you think about Utah politics, you think about politics around America, the politicians that we have. None of them are from Utah. None of them. None of them. Chafee from Huntington Beach. Jewish Democrat from Huntington Beach. Come here. Played football. Was a kicker at BYU. Got married. He's a political operative. Finally agree with him on one thing. He's going after them on the tax, you know, their nonprofit. It's bullshit. You know, so Mia Love. Her name is something that girl from, you know, she's Haiti. And think about her parents. As they came to New York, they left part of the kids behind. Oh, yeah, real good parents there, a real wholesome family. Oh, come on. We can get out, leave the other ones back. Just left them, abandoned them, which is very common in Haiti. So, and it's spread, spewed here. Oh, she went to Harvard. No, she didn't. She went to Hartford, a 2-year acting school, a second-rate, second-hand 2-year acting school. And they picked a name for her, watching 1970 pornos. As soon as she's elected, she has a book out. People don't run for office in integrity like they used to. There are plenty of politicians, plenty of good politicians. I'll quote Morgan about T.R. Teddy Roosevelt. We bought the son of a bitch, but the son of a bitch wouldn't stay bought. They all stay bought now. Lock, stock, barrel. And they're on the winning team. But isn't that America? Is it representative government? Absolutely. It mirror images us because we're willing to worship. Yay, look at him. He makes $100 million. We love Tom Brady and his wife. They're billionaires. When they go into Brentwood, tear down entire neighborhoods, put up giant fences. At least, I mean, I will never forget this. And this scumbag, I would like to knock him out. Bob Baffert, the horse trainer in California, who's a crooked little weasel, ugly creep. And, I mean, a disturbing lifestyle, disturbing person. I'm at Del Mar this year, standing right next to him. He's got 2 little kids. And the little kids look right at Dad. I'm sitting right there. And they say, Dad, why are we sitting with the normal people? We're not normal people. I look right at Baffert. I said, are you fucking kidding me? You're teaching them this? Mormon Bishop, right here in my ward. Well, officially my ward. I don't participate with these freaks. He says this. They have this thing down at their little store and put up this giant inflatable thing for the kids to jump in. On the side of it, it says, who gets the biggest house and the most toys wins. And it looks like a big castle, and the kids are jumping in it. I says, really? Really? You call yourself a Christian? Really? This is all sick and indoctrinated. I mean, hairspray, makeup on men. This is what, I mean, environment? What? For instance, here in Utah, the eagles, when they migrate from Alaska every year out to Farmington Bay, is a very, very big deal here. It always has been. Media always descends on it. It's a feel-good story. They're spectacular. People are very interested in it. You go out there, you take photographs of the track. And it's always been that way. It's always a big story on KSL, big story every year, and the tundras in the spring. This year, last year, of course, all the eagles died. You know, and I have my theories of why. Doug White killed them. But, so, this year I'm out there talking to Russ. I'm keeping an eye on the eagles and the numbers. And he says the first year since I've been here 32 years, not one single media. When you would think that would be the opposite. Oh, they're all dying. Let's see if they come back. Should be the biggest media. Up is down, black is white, blue is yellow, green is red. Now, I'm a very spiritual person. Very. But, per se, do I know what God is, per se, heaven, hell, all that? I have no idea. Never claimed to. But it's like when you quote the scriptures. People quote them, they take them out, whatever. You know, let's get real how many people wrote those. A lot of them are very powerful and profound. I really like to review some of them, and I like to read some of them. I like to go back. I like quotes of famous people, if you haven't noticed. I like, you know, Teddy's. I like, you know, lots of people's quotes. You know, Pollock's, Gandhi. I mean, I go over and over, but some of those scriptures are pretty powerful, you know, and profound. I mean, Didn't they say this would happen? There's plenty of scriptures that said this would happen. And people say, oh, how is it possible? 7 billion people. Yeah. How is it possible? How is it that California, 40-something, and let's get real, probably upwards of 50 million. They don't want to talk the so-called illegal, which I'll tell you what's illegal. Paying the illegal cash, that's illegal. It's not the exploiter, it's the exploiter. They created it. The same people who bitch about it love it. The hair-sprayed, bad hamburger-eating freaking exploiter who calls himself a contractor who never spent any time developing a trade. Bitches about it, sits around, watch fight, and he's the one doing it. Up is down, black is white, blue is yellow, red is green. Never in the history of humanity, ever. Can it continue to go on like this? I don't know. There's got to be a breaking point. The corruption is so outrageous. It is so gone. The debt is really 18 freaking trillion. Really. We go all in military. We worship the royal system that we decide we'd forget against or fight against. I still go back, and I will go back because my theory, science fiction economics, which is that is mine, I have it copyrighted. I tried to steal it. I had to threaten to sue him. Science fiction economics has been the biggest failure in world history. There's only one thing that trumps it: nuclearism. Go back. Let's go back and let's talk about nuclearism some today. Let's talk about the dynamic, the fate, the luck of the draw. Now let's get real. Everybody wants to talk about FDR and Churchill's relationship and how they come to be and how they think. Come on, they were both Masons. I mean, the Sonics run the entire show. But in the end, it comes down to decisions between man and of man, even in the Masonic circle. The Masonics were running the entire dynamic. You know, when they were bombed at Pearl Harbor, they knew the Japanese were coming. They admit it now. History books teach it. They had broken the code. They knew it. Setting up a freaking scenario. It's pretty sad to think that FDR is the guy who laid the groundwork for the USS Arizona. Now, he said he was tricked, blah, blah, blah. I believe him. I'm a fan of FDR's because of his polio. Now, I'm a fan of everything he did? No. But he said it over and over, so the dynamic plays out, the hideous World War I, and I go back to TR a lot, Teddy, which I'm a giant fan of Teddy Roosevelt. Absolute gigantic fan of Teddy Roosevelt. Did he make mistakes? Yeah, but that guy was amazing. I would hope to live one freaking 5% of the life that he lived. He lived 100 lives in one life. He was an amazing person. Really an amazing person. He didn't care who he took on. He was brave, he was strong, and he always thought about the right thing. Always. The square deal. He always thought about. By the way, I think that's the greatest term ever, economically. Simply the square deal. You know, let's remember, Teddy won a Nobel Peace Prize, and not like Barack. He won one rightfully so. When Russia and Japan were having their bloody nightmare war over Korea, I mean, Korea's been battled over for how long? I mean, it was a hideous freaking war. Horrible. Teddy just simply called him in. I like how he said this simply. He says, I'm not going to give you no chance to say, hey, I got to sit at the top table and I didn't. Report, we'll have a stand-up lunch. He brokered the deal, of course. Masonics, again, had the deal brokered. But he stopped it. He said, Japanese are not going to quit. The Japanese are not going to quit. We will refight this bloody battle in the Pacific with the Japanese over the Philippines, he said. And it will be one bloody, nasty war. And he says, the U.S. will win. The U.S. will win, but it will be a bloody, he called it. Oh, did he call it? And he won a Nobel Peace Prize, and rightfully so he won a Nobel Peace Prize. And the thing, of course, you know why I love him so much. Set aside the national parks. He just did it. He didn't give a fuck. Thank goodness he did do it. Can you imagine? These monsters in Utah and Idaho and Wyoming, the Mormon church rape artists that they've turned into, who hate the earth because they think the earth's let's get real, the Mormons don't believe that Jesus was the Son of God. They believe that Jesus turned into a God. That's what they believe. They believe there are thousands of gods, and that if you're a righteous, you become a god. That's what the Mormons believe. It's amazing to me the Mormons don't believe. Well, by the way, all the Mormon thesis comes out of old Masonic. It's purely Masonic. Now, the Masons have no power now whatsoever, and the fracture in the George Washington Masons. So we go back to nuclearism. So the whole thing evolves. You know, the Manhattan Project just opens the treasury. And let's never forget this. Let's never forget this. Oppenheimer and Einstein were peace activists. Oppenheimer was a peace activist. Oppenheimer did not want to drop it. Let's remember in April of 1945 what happened. I mean, one of the biggest blows that ever happened to this freaking country, which I believe that this nuclearism Cold War would have never happened. Warm Springs, FDR died. He died. It was an aneurysm in his brain. Yeah, he had a bad heart, but he was in horrible health, but he died. And we know what freaking Truman was. Now, they brokered the deal earlier to get Henry Wallace out of there. Henry Wallace should have become the president, which I still don't believe that happened. Would have never dropped if Henry Wallace wasn't remained president. Now, he would call himself the great socialist. Was I a big fan of his? Not really, but in the peace theory, I sure was. So here they are on the Black Sea. There's Stalin. There's Churchill. There's FDR, brokering the deal, dividing it up. And let's make no mistake about it. You people that say, oh, what they did to the Japanese people, let's talk about what the Japanese did to everybody for a long, long time. Japanese were evil. The Emperor Japanese made Hitler look like a church mouse. They had been committing atrocities for a very, very long time. Their royal Shogun elitist system, what they did to the Chinese, what they did to the Philippines, what they did to the Koreans, what they did over and over, what they did in Hong Kong, what they did over and over. This went on and on and on. Imperialistic freaking nation. Oh, you think the freaking Nazis were freaking racist? You know nothing about the Japanese culture at that time. You know nothing. They play long ball. Everybody says, oh, Truman, he should have never dropped it. Truman had no freaking options, none. He had to drop it. The thing about after he dropped it, what did it say on the marquee in Times Square with 2 million people in the ticker tape parade? What was the Times Square marquee flashing? Japs surrender, Japs surrender, Japs surrender. Racist? You know what kind of hatred? Did they key up Pearl Harbor? Oh, there's no doubt. They knew it was coming. They let it happen to get us in? No doubt. There's no doubt. It's the Gulf of Tonkin on steroids. Pretty sad that that's what we come to, But let's not kid ourselves. Hitler was a psycho, fucking crazed madman. Mussolini. People forget. Let's not forget Italy's role in this whole thing. Italy, lock, stock, barrel, fascist, evil. Italian killing Italian. People forget about World War I. What's his name? This is the first attack from the south on Rome in how many years? Another thing, they could have slaughtered them right then and there. But no, Stimson, that piece of dog shit, he waited. Got those men slaughtered. By the way, Andrew Bisu, who does on Fukushima Beach, does a beautiful job with Stimson on why he left Kyoto there. It's the only one that he didn't firebomb because he had a honeymoon there. And now Kyoto is where they're taking the waste from Fukushima. Now think about that. By the way, those documentaries that Andrew did are brilliant on Fukushima Beach. I participated and I helped him build the first one. And they're grand pieces of amazing. And he gave them away to the world. And it relies on a little bit of public donations, which it's funny what you'll public donate. You'll public donate to the NFL, who are billionaires, but a guy like him, you won't give him 5 cents. Christina Radchick, all the hard work. Jill Stan, right here, UCY TV. These people rely on donations. These are public services. Myself, whatever. It's amazing. But what, you'll throw money to Greenpeace? You'll throw money to Sierra Club? You'll throw money to the NFL, a nonprofit. Wow. Go build them a stadium with your tax dollars. Johnny, get your gun. It's amazing. So, they're at the Black Sea. They're dividing it up. Now, let's not forget Russia's role. 28 million. There were no men left. They were fighting with little boys and girls by the end. You know, the decision had been made by FDR long ago on, Franklin Delano. Delano's mother, French elitist royalty. Oh, they were the richest family, last of the Mohicans. I mean, come on, let's get real about the American continent. Let's get real about the colonies. I mean, white Anglo-Saxons were living there for a very long time. The French battling the English over what gets divided up, and the natives. I mean, last of the Mohicans is an incredible dynamic. But he made the decision. FDR had personally made the decision that no royals stand. He toured that to Churchill over and over and over. They're not standing. You could see Winston Winston was going psycho. By the way, the Marlborough clan, that's Winston, who's one of the most corrupt, evil men that ever walked before he became prime minister. He did some good things during World War II. Let's not kid, when he was sober enough. Do you know how much he drank for breakfast? He was whacked the whole time, completely. The Russians did all the heavy lifting, and then the U.S. mobilized. Wow. Yeah, and the industrialists capitalized and become filthy, stinky rich off it, because that's what the evil fucking creeps do. War profiteers on Balco. So, but the fact of the matter is the royals are going. The royal system's over forever. And let's not forget Sweden's role in this thing. I got a really great story about Denmark and Norway. And I'll tell my great story about that dynamic. The heavy water. I love the story. Those activists, those freaking sailors snuck in there and they blew Hitler's boat out trying to get into Sweden. Now, that was a few guys in a little PT boat. Pretty amazing what they did. They sunk that fucker. Thank goodness they sunk it. But Hitler was never close to the bomb. You do know that. Einstein said at the end of his life, over and over and over, the worst thing I ever did was write FDR the letter. And it was that letter that FDR, that handwritten letter by Einstein, that set the man high fault, because he was sure that Hitler had it. Or was very close to having it, and he wasn't. And he says, I wish I'd never. Let's get real. What a peace activist Einstein was. I'm a giant fan of Einstein, not because of his science. Oh, no. Because the intuitive side of his brain. I like to run off the intuitive side. What was his great quote? The intuitive mind serves the logical mind, and we celebrate the logical mind when we should be celebrating the intuitive mind. It was the intuitive mind. He had a dream that like that. It's the intuitive mind that the natives run on. It's the intuitive mind that Teddy really went on the intuitive mind. Because that's it's called logic. The Buddhists know it. The Hindus knew it. They all know it. They go right down to the purity of logic, and then they rely on the intuitive nature to structure the logic. The meditation walking. I know that. That's, my meditation walking through my cancer dynamic. So Saul's looking right at him. Are you kidding me? The price we paid? We took all Eastern Europe, and was I a fan of communism? Oh, hell no. The Mormons tried it, whatever. But, the United States, they weren't about, the political will after that nightmare. Really? You're going to go fight Russia now? By the way, Stalin and FDR became very close friends. I loved it when Stalin got word that FDR was dead. Do you know what the first words out of Stalin's mouth was? Churchill poisoned him. The Queen, England poisoned him. Maybe they did. Boy, they're sure happy, I can tell you that. The House of Windsor and the House of Hanover were dancing in the streets the day he died, because they knew they were done. The deal was brokered on the Black Sea that the bomb was going to be shared. And I cannot overstate this. The bomb was going to be shared. Here was the agreement. And I think it's unbelievable how people freaking over-quantify this, look at it, and say the failures. What? The deal was struck. Here was the deal. Yeah, you can take Eastern Europe, but here's the deal. You have to participate in finishing off Japan. Russia was out of man right up. The deal was brokered to help finish it off. That means you share your bomb technology with our bomb technology. Now, Oppenheimer says scare them. Drop a scare bomb. These are Frank's words talking about J. Robert. J. Robert was I mean, you're talking one of the most brilliant men in the history of mankind, who I think would have been one great environmentalist, riding his horse through the hills of freaking New Mexico for days as a boy. He reminded me of TR a lot. They were naturalists. They loved the environment. They were connected to the environment because that's what intellectual people do. That's what people run in because they understand how connected and how romantic and how beautiful. You know, FDR at the end of his life, I love this story at the end of FDR's life. Towards he got to go back to Saginaw Hill, and they got to go back out to the dynamic out there and sit on the banks one afternoon, evening. And what I do it with my grandsons. I love to do this. It's one of my favorite things because I live in a place like that. I used to, like there. One of the bird capitals of the world, like it was along the Hudson. And he sat there, and this is how brilliant he was. And they identified birds. They bird watch and listen to their whistles. He identified 120 birds, 30-something of them just by their voice. That's what we do. Me and my grandsons will sit out in my house in the evenings or during the day, you know, and that's what we do. You can hear it. It's amazing, the sounds. You know, it's incredible. You know, people don't do it. Those people did it. That's what made them who they were. So they're like, kill the emperor, which the emperor should have been dropped on his house. You got to realize the Japanese elite royal family could be the evilest family in the history of humanity. Bar none. I mean, these people are, and let's not forget about the Bataan Death Marches. Do you know how fucking evil they were? You know, the American soldiers back to back, all the Allied soldiers back to back, starved to death, and nothing more than a diaper. Forcing them to mine, whatever. They said they would sit back to back. So when they died, one of them died, one of the other prisoners wouldn't slit their throat and drink their blood. Living on urine, and I think beyond horrific. You know, the Japanese people, did they have a chance? No, hell. They never had a chance. Never had a chance because they had been indoctrinated for centuries, and they went along with it. They still go along with it. Do not kid yourself. They still go along. State secret. Now, not all of them. There's a giant dynamic in Japan that is such an incredible story since post-Fukushima that have really beautifully fought back. They're putting him in prison. They're killing him. They're forcing him to work. You know, the slaves. Now think about just the whole elitist idealism in Japan. The mob's running the cleanup, using homeless, using slaves. They don't care. And America goes along with it because it is, when they divide it up, we got Japan. It's a fact. Barack Obama had two things he's ever said. These treaties were signed long before I ever was born. So, they're going to share the bomb. That's Churchill knows. He knows that he said it over and over and over. Franklin said it over and over and over and over and over. He said it in his freaking 35 chats. He said it over and over. Colonialism is done. Royal and colonialism will never exist again. They are done. Do you understand me, Winston? They are done. You know, they were done. He knew it. Winston knew it. You could see in those photos. He's over there. He knew he was done. He knew that Russia and the United States were the new powers of the world, and that Russia and the United States were getting together and becoming. Let's get clear about freaking the Russian dynamic, which I'm going to put up a video today called Plutonium Wars, my chapter second. I'm going to do a book online called Plutonium Wars, which I've already introduced it and everything, and because a lot of my videos are visual literature. I don't have a publicist. If I had a publicist, maybe I would put this in, but I'm not going to write some book and just freaking, that's not going to sell any copies. I'll wait until, if I have to get a European publicist, I'll do it. My guess that's what's going to happen. My guess I'll get a publicist probably in Denmark, or maybe Switzerland, or maybe Holland, which I'm working with some people there, you know, and in Switzerland. I'm working with people there. There's plenty of Europeans that watch my videos, and strong Europeans that believe in me. So, the deal struck. They're going to share the bomb. They're going to drop a scare bomb? Maybe. My guess is they would have dropped at least one. They were going to drop 3. They dropped 2, and they were horrific. And now you think about the art community in the United States, and Ford, and all these guys protecting the Nazis, which they protected them. Do not make no mistake. They all lived in Michigan. They worked for GM, and they worked for Ford. They were protected, which is beyond outrageous. It is beyond outrageous. And let's make no mistake about it. Hitler was one of the evilest, creepiest human beings to ever set foot on this earth. And the German populace, a lot of them did not go along with it. Did they have any choice? Are you kidding me? You're going to go against that machine as it gained traction? So, at Warm Springs, he drops dead. Churchill is dancing. In the house of Hanford, in Buckingham Palace, they are dancing. Now, let's remember this. Before the war broke out, the popular opinion, including in the United States military, including Stinson, including the ambassador, Joseph Kennedy, including all of these guys, everybody who was anybody, said, let Hitler take England first. Let them destroy the Queen, and it's a done deal. Joseph Kennedy, it's a done deal. England's done. They're done. They wanted to let them take all the royals out. Then we'll step in. FDR's oh no. You know, remember his lease program, his Lend-Lease? What did he say? Lend-Lease. You know, which people that go off about that just, you know, to the royals. He Lend-Lease to the royals. Do not kid yourself. He did that for Russia, too. A lot of the Russian military weaponry came from us. And it was brokered in Tehran, by the way. It was all brokered in Tehran. You know, and so he says, no, we're not going there because I think, you know, polio, he was 39 years old when he got polio. Can you imagine how devastating? How devastating. His own mother used to say, he had the most beautiful freaking legs. He was all legs. I mean, that dude was a tall day. And those things were taken away from you? Wow. But I believe in his soul. Now, was it brokered through the Masons? Of course, it was brokered through the fucking Masons. Absolutely, it was brokered through the Masons. So they let him stand. They let the royals stand on the deal. The deal, yeah, we'll let you stand while we're fighting, but the royals are gone. Colonialism's over. Churchill knew it. Stalin knew it. They all knew it. But fate had a different idea. So he dies. We know. 8/6 I do a gig at the Enola Gay hangar at the exact moment that the Enola Gay flew out of the hangar. Teller's office. I do it I stand in Teller's office. I stand right there. You know, me and Annika from Russia. You know, my feminine girl from freaking the 80s and 90s, her and I. I've done it for 35 years. You know, nobody goes. You know, last year Ackerman flew in clear from Canada, you know, and there was, you know, Patrick McCormick drove up, the artist from Las Vegas, Linda Sauer, you know, up in Idaho, she come over. But I do my gig out there that was 3/11/11. We did our third year anniversary, but I do a gig on there 8/6 every year. And I call it the nuclear triangle, the nuclear triangle, Russia, Japan, the United States, which I was painting those way back in the 90s, before Fukushima ever happened. So Jepson didn't die very long ago. I talked to Jepson many times. By the way, what's his name? The other crew member, the last crew member. I did a gig out there, was interviewed by KSL out there. Nobody, they don't care anymore. When he died. You know, so they drop it. And then they drop another one. This is how dug in the Emperor is and how sick this bastard is and disconnected. They're going to drop a third one. Why did they drop it on his head? Again, broker deal. United States freaking takes control, but obliterates it. The museum structures, there was incredible art that was painted right after Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I post a lot of them on my website. Brilliant, ugly, hard, brutal. I mean, it's brilliant art that they were painting. The museums in the United States to this day refuse to show it. So the cover-up of Fukushima is nothing new. The cover-up of Hiroshima and Nagasaki set the table. The playbook was set by Teller. So they force Oppenheimer out. They force Einstein away from the field. How do they pull that? Because the military, they want to go to war all the time, every second of every day, over and over and over and over. And I want to say this before I forget about the fucking NFL and American culture, and this really pisses me off. Carnival Cruise. I don't know if you watch the advertisements on the Super Bowl. Carnival Cruise is one of the evilest companies in the world. They dump their waste in California harbors, in San Francisco, outside the line, does their documentary, Why Are All the Marquee Athletes and Triathletes Dying? Because they're swimming in San Francisco Bay. They're swimming in Pacific. Many of them in our hospital. I'm in there with them. The guy who won Ironman died in there with me. Lots of these athletes. That's why they're dying. So Carnival Cruise plays their advertisement in the inception of the Super Bowl. 118 million eyeballs on it, just in the United States alone. And they play John Kennedy's incredible quote. Now, John Kennedy, when he gave that speech, is right on the heels of reading Silent Spring, By the Sea, Rachel Carson, Rachel Carson, Rachel Carson, Rachel Carson. It's nothing more. His speech in a quote is nothing an expansion off Rachel Carson's beautiful, incredible quotes. He's speaking Rachel Carson right out of his mouth. You know, our blood in our body has the exact same percentage of salt as the sea. We come from the sea. And they go up and they play that why this quote's on, and they don't finish the quote. When they finish the statement and the quote, FDR's talking about the pollution and the destruction of the sea. How can we do that? They cut that off. Now, I'll be a senior citizen in California this year. See, they've gone the way of Florida. You're a senior citizen in California at 55 years old now. Now, why? They're baiting the cruise line. California is becoming the new Florida. They're baiting all the retirees in, which they've destroyed San Diego. So it's becoming a retirement community. They're ruining California. It is tuning into the new Florida. And I'm not kidding. And so here's the deal that's been brokered with the cruise line industry. You know, we want you back. We want you here. But the environmentalists were not about to let them dump their waste into the harbors. California says, okay, go ahead. So they've been dumping their waste into the harbors of California. There's a new pier being built. I've walked it. I walked it this year, right there. I've walked that pier so many times. The entire peninsula of San Francisco, I walk it all the time. I did it this year. There's plenty of videos right there. I call it 44. I put 44 videos up at once on the context. I called it Walking to Try to Find an Organic Juice Bar in San Francisco. Walked it all in 2 days. Most of it in 1 day. You know? So there's a new pier. I think it's 38 or 39. Who would ever believed it? The dope dealers used to be down. The dope dealers are right at your local grocery store now. Drive-in pharmacies. So it's outrageous that they pull this stuff, and people just sit back and suck it up and take it. Our parents would have never stood for it. They would have never stood for it. There are no activists. There are no people that go after them. There are no people that attack them. In media, some responsible people inside so-called MSM would have stood up and said, hey, this is outrageous. Remember Kathleen Gifford, the attack that she was under for using sweatshop employees? It's on Balco now. So back to the dynamic on the Black Sea. So they brokered the deal. They don't do it because he's dead. Truman, he was the military's bitch. Bomb, 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 bomb. And Oliver Stone's right. Those guys come out of there so arrogant and so incredible. It was unbelievable. But set the table for Korea, set the table for Vietnam and the whole thing. And we just went along with it. We were 18th in the 1930s military power. 18th. We were isolationists, and rightfully so. But we couldn't let anybody attack our soil. So did they create the attack on Pearl Harbor? Somewhat. But let's get Japan was freaking imperialist nation builders, and Hitler was a creep, and Mussolini. Come on, and you love it in American freaking culture how backwards we are, and we were warned that we would forget the dynamic. Mike Tyson singing on a record with Madonna, and he's quoting that he was inspired by Mussolini. Are you kidding me? In New York City, no freaking red-blooded freaking American Italian would have freaking stood for that 15, 20 years ago. What kind of freaking horrific nightmare. Nobody in Brooklyn, the whole freaking Brooklyn would have went psycho on a statement like that, especially by one of their own. Mussolini, one of the creepiest human beings who ever walked the face of the... Let's make no mistake of Mussolini, Hitler. Talk about the Swedish royalties. Oh, they went along. Here's my story. My bloodlines go back to northern Denmark. The Swedes were participating with Hitler because they think they're elitists, I guess, too, at the time. So I think it still falls back in the Julian Assange thesis. I think they still have these ties among the so-called elites, the so-called, what you guys want to call it, well, I call it the old world order. So my doctor, it's an amazing story. I used to tell my grandma all the time, these old school Danish philosophy stories, they run through my bloodlines, my family. The guy who built Mount Rushmore, his mom and dad and my great-grandparents were in the ship together. Very close friends. I think it's amazing. It's a beautiful story. Very, very close friends. He's from right here. He's a Mormon Danish immigrant that built it. Went to school in San Francisco. What a piece of art. And by the way, they got it right. They got it right on that mountain. They got it right. So, as is, Denmark has been pummeled for so long. I love it. Why are Denmark the most happiest people in the world? I love what what's-her-name says. We have very low expectations. We've been pummeled for freaking 1,000 years. I mean, and they are the happiest people on earth. By the way, I plan to be there this summer. So, I'm going to see my family. I've traced them down. My last name would be Anderson Mickelson. They still live in the same family homes, from what I understand. Never met them. So, the Norwegians are the ones who fought back. Oh, did they fight back? Denmark tried. I mean, they tried about like French and Poland. They had no chance against that machine of Hitler's. By the way, England had no chance against that without us, without Russia. No chance. And let's make no mistake about the Europeans. Europeans that think you're all that, you love to slaughter each other. Love. And if it wasn't for the Europe, one place you'd be slaughtering each other, and you're on the verge of it again. I'll be talking about this in the Ukraine later today on my YouTube site with Tony Morse. Which, by the way, I have that term copyrighted. I got it copyrighted this week. So, when my doctor, I got sick, there's a Danish philosophy doctor here who's old school. He's never retired. And the Danish philosophy of Christianity is very different. And their whole way of life, which I buy into, by the way. I very much buy into Danish philosophy, especially when it comes to medicine. Danish philosophy and medicine saved my life, by the way. So, everybody's telling me I'm going to die. I have two incredible uncles that neither one of them like me. One of them's still alive. He's probably the greatest neurosurgeon in the world. He can't stand me. That's all right. As his best friend, one of my doctors says, you look just like him, you talk just like him, you act just like him, whatever. And I said, yeah, he hates me. Because he's a goody two-shoe Mormon who's brought into the Kool-Aid. But that's okay. I don't care. He doesn't deal with me. I don't deal with him. We're from the same town. Let him have his fucking dogma. Go ahead. But I respect him greatly, and he helped me out when I was sick by having a conversation with one of my doctors. And then my other uncle, who's probably the guy who invented open heart surgery, started the art and credit, whose name is Thomas Blanch. He couldn't stand me either. By the way, his wife was my English teacher in high school, and she died of leukemia very young, and she couldn't stand me. I was a heathen. I was fucking a wild maniac, and so they couldn't, they're like, oh, God, look at this guy. He's long blonde hair, drinking, boozing, partying. He's out now, going through girls, doing whatever, blah, 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 which they didn't know me. It was all knee-jerk thing, and it was misrepresentation of me. That's what we do with people, isn't it? And that's what they did. But anyway, so I finally got in to see Vincent Hansen, family from the same village as mine. He says, Kevin, I know you. He was a downwinder in southern Utah. His father and brother both died of thyroid cancer. I think he's the greatest doctor in the freaking world. Of course I will. He saved my life. He's an amazing, beautiful person. He's an old man. He won't retire because without him, he says, Kevin, I would never say this about anybody. I'm glad you didn't have that surgery. And these other doctors are wrong. I'm glad you stood your ground. I can't believe I didn't get in to see you. He says, your uncle was my ex-business partner. He was the most brilliant man I ever knew. By the way, I've died of heart disease. He saved so many people of freaking heart disease, and then he died of heart disease. He was an amazing, amazing, brilliant man. Our real last name, Anderson. Our grandfather, all of us, was a guy named Christian. 11-year-old boy pushing a handcart across here. Amazing man. Really an amazing man. I still live on the family ranch right where he did. So he says, I'm going to put some, he says, I think maybe you're right, Kevin. He had arguments with the pathologist, Silverman, supposedly the best pathologist in the state, argued with me, argued with everybody. He says, Kevin, no, you're wrong. I saw a YouTube video talking about the lower right mesentery and tumors in the lower right mesentery and how this pathologist, Cedar Sinai, a YouTube video, 14 views. saying he thinks they get it wrong more than they're right because it's tough. And I knew that leukemia could form in tumors. I'm like, Vincent, what about it being leukemia in tumors, whatever? And he says, and he listened to me, and he knew. And he's like, he had tears in his eyes. And this is an old out of college. Because of me, because I respected your uncle so much. He was a brilliant genius. He changed my life in so many ways. And he says, you remind me so much, man. I know your ways, Kevin. I know who you are, and I know your anti-nuclear thesis. And he looked right at me, and he says, so he bone marrow boxed me right there. His assistant, beautiful blonde female from San Diego, got me up there groaning my hip. I says, you remind me of freaking my beautiful blonde-haired, blue-eyed freaking, ex from San Diego. But when she was up on my back, she wasn't digging into my freaking bone marrow. Those things hurt, by the way. I had a lot of them. There's scars along my back all over from them. They keep you awake. They're brutal. They hook into your bone marrow and dig it out and smear it. Go home, Kevin, and I'm going to get back to you. From what I hear from his secretary, his third party, this is the calmest, coolest, collected man in history. Intense conversations with for a long time. He put huge work into me. Without that, I'm dead. I'm on the verge of death. I'm right on the verge of death. He makes a phone call. He has a young secretary call me, and he says, hey, Vincent says you're to be in the bone marrow transplant, and you cannot make this up tomorrow. The next day is 11/11/11. You know my gig about 11s. My two little 11s that came. My two little grandsons, born just days after Fukushima, of course, 3/11. My daughter's like, I know your gig with 11. You're not really going, are you? And I says, oh, my God. And I was broke down. And so I called him back. She's all, and so Vince is busy, but I'll have him call you. He called me, and he says to me, and you could hear him choking up. Kevin, I probably should have called you. I'm like, my dad died of this. You know that? And he says, yes, I do. And he says, I'm sorry, but you don't know. And I said, I'm not going to that dump, LDS. It's a dump. He says, it's under construction. I said, it's been under construction my whole life. I'm not going to that dump. I've been in there before when I was young. I had asthma really bad, and I had these radical, crazy quacks almost killing me in there when I was a kid. Doing stuff with my lungs. I was mutated as a child, had a lot of health issues as a child, a lot. Went through a lot of freaking pain as a child, a lot, because of my father being nuked and my twin sister. So he's like, you can hear him chirping. He said, no, Kevin, you don't know. You don't know. There's a guy named Finbo Peterson down there. And he says, it's the greatest leukemia unit on the world. And he says, I would not say this about anybody. He says, you have one brutal, nasty cancer in your lower right. He says, it's nasty. It's horrible. And he says, I don't think I'd say this about anybody else. I would probably send almost everybody else home to die. But he says, you're one of those rare birds that I think there's a chance you can overcome this because you're so strong and you're so intense. I think, and they don't use the word cure. He says, I think there's a possibility that you could be cured. And that's what I respected him, and I knew it, so I went. Kimbo Peterson, big tall Dane, comes in there. I had a dream before I got cancer, the most utopic dream I ever had. 44 and these icons on a slot machine that now I know they're cancer tumors. Most utopic dream I ever had in my life. First day I'm in there, Kimbo comes and sees me. First thing right after that, I start talking about Danish philosophy medicine. His family's from northern Denmark. My family's from Vincent's family's from northern Denmark. It's Danish philosophy medicine in here. There. Doctors don't even outrate nurses. They have what they call rounds. Even the maids get a say. I'm like, wow. And we talked about the dream. And, a lot of the Danish philosophy believes you cannot trick the subconscious. You cannot trick it. You must listen to it. And he says, you hold on to that dream. Don't you dare. And you hold on. And I told him what Vincent said. He told me. So he, right off the gate, without hesitation, he says, I want to tell you a story, Kevin, about Denmark. You know why I'm named Fimbo? That's a Norwegian name. And I said, yeah, that's what I thought. He says, anybody you born in 1945, 1946, 1947, 1948, 49 in Denmark, I was born right after the war. He says, the Danes named all their children after Norwegians because it was Norway who kept Hitler out of there from slaughtering them, or they would have freaking been slaughtered just as freaking hard as the rest. And let's not kid ourselves about the slaughter in Europe. The slaughter was horrific. Horrific. Any of you get a chance, you go to Belgium, to the killing fields. Go there. They ring the bells constantly over sacred, hallowed, the killing field. Europeans love to kill. They're on the verge of doing it again right now. Not my word, Gorbachev's words. So he dies. FDR dies. Truman's all for the military. So then we get a piece of dog shit, one of the greatest pieces of dog shit scum who ever walked the face of the earth, and Joseph McCarthy. Joseph McCarthy and the Congress and the paranoid schizos are the ones who made the decision, and I can prove it, with the work of Teller and Lawrence. Lawrence and Teller and Joseph McCarthy and Congress and the American made the decision to human lab rat their own Marines in the Nevada test site. 1951. My father, let's not forget the older brother, my Uncle Harold, who just passed away, who raised me. Amazingness. My grandmother to him. My grandpa, all the other boys out there, there were farmers in this farmer community. They got deferments. There were 11 boys that age. 10 of them took deferments. You could have got a deferment. My grandmother to my grandfather. Are you kidding me? My son's going to sit here? My son's going to be here while Hitler is slaughtering our relatives in Europe? Are you crazy? I don't think so. Oh my God, no, he needs to stay here with me. My grandma gets him out of bed at 4 o'clock in the morning on his 18th birthday. Dresses him up, puts everything, has it arranged, walks up the lane in the middle of the night, has a ride for him picked up. She has this big doll. You know, she used to like dolls, big set. Puts the doll in the bed so my grandpa won't know. My grandpa goes in and checks. How come you're not up? How come you're not up? She tricks him. My grandma's words. By the way, my grandma's brother was an admiral on one of the ships. Both our brothers were already there. My brothers are there, and my son's going, period. They will not slaughter my family over there without my son. So the same thesis, he was on Omaha Beach on D-Day. He was in the Battle of the Bulge. This guy, wow. German Luger used to turn underneath his seat in the car. One time I pulled it out with a break around it with notches. I said, where'd you get it? Where do you think I got it? You know, big, strong, incredible man. Amazing, pillar of the community. So the same people who dodged the draft board. My dad, wow, beautiful. My dad was one of those beautiful dark Danes. I don't know if you know about dark Danes, but a lot of them are incredibly beautiful. I personally think the most beautiful females on earth. My older sister's one of them. My oldest daughter, I think, is one of them. My dad. They draft him. The only boy out there drafted. He goes right to the Marine Corps. He's in there. They know his father's patriotism. They put him through the testing. They want their best to lab rat him in the fucking Nevada test site and kill him. They put him on TP boats, fucking combat ready for Korea. Turn him around in the middle of the night, load him on trucks, secretly take, not the ones you see in the trenches, at the blast. They blast the bejesus out, kill many of them at the blast. Freaking load them up, transport them into makeshift hospitals there. At the makeshift hospital, at the Nevada test site, they cut their tonsils out. They put them in jars to test the radiation on the orders of Teller, on the orders of Lawrence, the schizophrenics. Oppenheimer is a gas. Einstein is a gas. Oppenheimer's having fits. We label him as a communist because he married a communist from Spain. Really? Really? Franco? Are you kidding me, Franco? Wow. Franco is still alive. Franco is still alive. Franco is still alive. Isn't that all we heard when we were kids? Think about that Spanish Civil War, the slaughter, the pain, the horrific. You know, it's amazing to me how unread the American populace is. You know, that back to TR. You know, people say, oh, Wilson was the most high IQ prisoner in the world. Oh, no. TR. Teddy Roosevelt was the most high IQ president in modern history by many, many. Teddy Roosevelt would read 3 books a day sometimes. 3. Self-taught multiple languages. Did he butcher the language? He didn't care, but he could communicate. Highest IQ man that ever, and by far, by man, Barack Obama, he would make the top 50. What a fraud. A total fraud. Take his Nobel Prize and shove it up his ass. Marie Antoinette, let them eat yellow cake. Raises the limits. So they draft my dad. Blown up in Nevada. He says he woke up in a hospital. He didn't tell them stories because he was Semper Fi as it gets. Marine. Back and forth inside the Marine complex. He woke up in a hospital after many days in San Diego. He had no idea. By the way, they fed him LSD. He woke up. He used to tell me all the time. The only thing I remember is all the freaking beautiful freaking San Diego nurses trying to crawl in bed with me. You know, and my mom, you know, they didn't get married till I was 26. Where my mom came from a very elitist family that the money had been wiped out in the Depression. I came from very sophisticated grandparents, incredibly, on that side, but their money was gone by the Depression had taken it away like so many. What a story. And so he was in and out of the vet's hospital, I mean, for months and months at a time when I was at incredible seizures. I mean, mentally, he was the sharpest man I ever knew. He had a wit like Twain. He was a genius. I mean, a genius. Physical specimen, never had a cavity in his life. Incredible strength, amazing. This dude was amazing. My uncle who played in the NFL, who's probably the greatest athlete overall that ever came out of this state, ever, who's still alive living in Alaska. His younger brother says, Kevin, you know he was stronger than me. He was better than me. What did they do to him? He says, he come back, he can't run. He can't have anything. You know, he's chased me. He couldn't catch me. You know, he's always mad at me. The human lab rat had 40,000 of them. They killed a lot of them at the blast. Eugene McCarthy made the choice. I will piss on Eugene McCarthy's grave one day. It's one of my goals in life. It's my bucket list. I will piss on Teller's grave. It's my bucket list. I hate Cal Berkeley with a deep-rooted passion. I hate Livermore. Lawrence, I will piss on his grave. It's one of my bucket lists, and this is before I got cancer. What they did to me, that dwarfs in Pell to what they did to him. Took his beautiful life away for their sick, mentally ill paranoia. They were paranoid sickos. At the Senate offer hearing on 10/27, what a day they picked. That day in 1962 that the world almost ended. I'm in that hearing. I went on my rant. Well, there was one of the scientists from the Manhattan Project at Berkeley's sons, a genius. He says, yeah, I'm Jewish. He says, these Jewish paranoid schizos freaking that took the field. But he went off and he backed up. And he backed up. And he says, the $53 billion extorted at Lawrence Livermore Lab from the tax man, I want it fucking back. I want it back. I'm a California tax. I want it fucking back. A genius. And I cue off the mat. Oh, did he get it? Oh, he's the first person I've ever talked to that really got this entire dynamic in full. 350 open-air tests in Nevada. Boom, 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 boom. So the Russians are, oh, yeah? Stalin is so pissed off he can't even see. Now, don't get me wrong. Stalin, evil son of a bitch. But let's talk about the slaughter of World War II. There were no men left. The poor Ukrainians. Here we go again. Chernobyl. I mean, their price they paid in the last century. Enough. The famine. World War I, World War II, Chernobyl, and now what we're doing there, my God, it's a wonder there's a person left alive there. It's beyond heartbreaking. It's human rights. There are no human rights activists. The only one is sitting in a prison cell on Atlantic Avenue in Brooklyn, and no one seems to give a shit, named Megan Rice. I do. I went to her trial. I've stood with her hand in hand in the Nevada test site more than once. With her mother, so I know her, with her mom. So, they start Andrei Sakharov, and if anybody of you don't know about him, you need to learn. One of the greatest human rights in human history. Stalin says, oh yeah, they want to play, let's play. How about 100 megatown bomb? 100. And they would have dropped 100. Sakharov backed it off to 50 secretly. He didn't even tell freaking any of them that he was doing it. He backed it off secretly. We recorded it as an earthquake. Then it was my dad's bigger than your dad, and it's still my dad's bigger than your dad. Nuclearism never stopped, and it's killing you. We'll continue this conversation on Thursday, but it's about time the American fucking populace quit being so illiterate and pulled their head out of their ass and realized fucking we're going to fucking annihilate this fucking land. It's only a matter of time. And
all nuclear fighters, all hands on deck, all hands on deck, all hands on deck. All nuclear fighters, all hands on deck, all hands on deck, all hands on deck. They'll be calling you a radical. Swingate.